Hey, everybody, before we get started with today's episode, I have a quick announcement to make. So, Thanksgiving is almost here. And as a way of giving my thanks to you, I wanted to offer you something pretty awesome. So, I'm going to give three people the opportunity to work with me in December. And you are going to tell me what you want to pay for it. So, choose what you pay. That's what we're doing. So for the month of December, three people will have the chance to work with me and you choose what you pay. So here's one thing that I want to tell you though. The focus in December, I don't want to put it on massive weight loss, massive calorie cuts, massive fat loss efforts, because this is the holiday season and most people want to enjoy the holiday season. So I don't want to do a restricted diet with you. You can eat your cookies, you can have your wine if you want to, you can have these things, but the focus in December is going to be taking this month and building strength and speeding up your metabolism, also eating as healthy as we can without being restrictive, as I mentioned. So we want to have a good balance with our food and we want to lift weights, we want to get strong and speed up our metabolism. So that way, when we get to the end of the month, you're not going to feel like, oh, I'm so gross, I have to start everything over. January 1st comes and you're going to be like 95% of people who are like, I have to start over, I feel really terrible. I don't want this for you. That's why I'm offering this option, this opportunity to work with me in the month of December. So the focus is going to be speeding up your metabolism, getting strong, and eating good food. And that includes some of your favorite treats or whatever the things are that you want to eat. So if you want to work with me one-on-one and you want to choose what you pay for it, here is your opportunity. So if you want to apply, make sure to find the application link. This is in the description of this video if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're listening, you can go to my Instagram, you can go to my Facebook, you can go to my Fit and Fuel Facebook group. You can find the link to the application in all of these places. So applications close the day after Thanksgiving, so that is the 25th. It is Friday, so this is when the applications close, and I will email the three winners on Monday. All right, on to the show. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Balanced Vibes podcast. Today's episode is going to be different. So, every now and then, I like to do something different that is not related to fitness or nutrition. And today, I got this idea to do an episode of the things that shocked me or surprised me when I first moved to the United States. So, just something a little fun, a little different. I have been in the States for over 10 years now. I got here in 2012 when I first got the scholarship. So I did an episode on that too, why I changed my career from linguistics PhD to doing what I do now, helping women with their health and fitness and fat loss and muscle building and like good stuff. So this is when I first came here. Of course, I had visited the country before too, but this is when I moved. So now I've been here for over 10 years, and I think it's fun to look back at the things that at first were almost like a culture shock. And I think if you're local, if you live in the States, you may never have thought about these things. So maybe this is interesting and fun for you. So I have a lot of points here. I think I have 22 points here that were surprising or interesting or wow for me. So let's just dive in. I have to say, I at first tried to organize them in the order of like how I found them, or when I first got here, and now how things that I discovered later. But it actually didn't work because there's a lot of overlap here. So the order isn't in any way like absolutely chronological or anything like this. But yes, I have over 20 points here. And also, one thing I want to say before I dive into these points is that I am coming from Europe, right? And in Europe, I used to live in two countries. So I don't know if everybody in Europe would have the same perspective on all of these things. But me, having lived in most of my life in Estonia and also over 4 years in Finland, these things that I'm going to mention to you today about the life in the United States have definitely been a little bit of like a culture shock or a surprise. And right now, they're not anymore because I'm here, I live here, this is my home now. I don't even notice necessarily all these things anymore, although some I still do, but most of them I don't. But there's probably even more of these points than what I'm going to talk about today because I just don't remember them all, or I've gotten so used to them. But anyways, here are the ones that crossed my mind when I was thinking about this topic. All right, number one is the entering the country and the airports. Okay, so this was very strict and almost like frightening when you visit, when you come from outside of the US. The treatment is like very strict. It's almost you feel like, did I do something wrong? And this is really unusual because the security officers and everybody's like so strict and so almost like military that honestly it's scary. If you first enter the country, you really get this feeling like, did I do something wrong? I don't know, am I in big trouble? Because that's the feeling you get based on how they talk to you, how like angry they can get. Is very unusual. I remember one time, that was 2010, I got in trouble for stepping away from a suitcase for, I don't know, maybe like 3 feet or something, and some sort of airport officer got extremely mad at me and threatened to take my stuff away from me. And I was really shocked. I was like, what? I just walked away from my bags to put something in the trash can. What is this? But holy cow, that was a really scary moment for me. And it's every time when I go back and forth between Europe and the States, I find like in the States the airports are so much stricter, and I feel like you really have to like look around you and behave really well to not get in trouble. So that was my first experience when I ever visited the United States. All right, the second thing, and this is a big one. The second kind of culture shock was how big everything is in the United States. Everything from cars to houses to just streets, like how wide they are, to like coffee, right? You order coffee, and what's small in the States, in Europe, that would be large for sure. And if you go to Europe and you order a small coffee, you get like a really small one, you're going to be disappointed and you're like, oh my God, I have to order like 3 more. So everything is so much bigger. And I remember sometimes going to people's homes and thinking they have 5 kids or something because of how big their fridge was. But it came out that it was just 2 people. And same thing, but like I said, cars, food, the portions of food are massive in my opinion. Still think they're really large, especially when my mom comes to visit. My mom generally just doesn't have huge appetite anyway, so when she visits and we go to a restaurant, we take the rest home and she gets to eat like 4 times after that restaurant meal. So everything is really huge. That's very interesting. And I think the entire like kitchen equipment, that was a really big shock for me because the fridges, the ovens, the microwaves, the dishwashers, everything was massive. And I always got this impression that there's gotta be like 10 people living in this house. And that's the same thing when I go back to Europe now and I look at their dishwasher. I'm like, is this for like 2 plates? What is this? But it's just such a different thing. All right. So the next thing that I realized here was how talkative people are. They really are. And I don't know, it can be very different from if you're coming from Southern Europe, like say like Spain or some areas of France or Portugal, where people are more talkative. But where I'm from, like Estonia and Finland, people are not nearly as talkative. And at first, this was really hard, to be honest with you, because when I first got here, my language definitely wasn't nowhere near to where it is right now. And I vividly remember, so I got here at 2012 October, and it was the pumpkin everything time, right? And we went out on a little road trip with a couple of friends that I had just made, and we just wanted coffee, right? So we go to a Starbucks, and then I just wanted coffee. I don't know, a coffee, please. And then the barista starts telling me like all these like different pumpkin options and macchiatos and cappuccinos and lattes and syrups. And she just gave me like a long list of things, and then she asked me how I'm doing and how's my day going. And it was so overwhelming because I didn't, the information overload was massive. The language was just like so fast she was talking, and I was there just like standing up and pretty much like shivering and just like, please give me one coffee. thank you, bye. Like I didn't know what to say. It was just so much. Now, of course, I'm used to people chit chat and ask how you're doing, and you just like have this casual conversation. But at first, it was so overwhelming. And also, I just want a simple coffee. Why is there like 13 different options? It was scary. It was scary. It's just so much of everything. It's like abundance of everything. It was so unusual. Okay, so the next thing, and this is a really, really good thing, I really love this, is that people, generally speaking, are very open and very friendly. And I experienced it, from the beginning. So in 2010, I got my scholarship to University of Boulder in Denver, sorry, in Colorado. And my flight from Finland from Helsinki to Denver, on that flight, I met this person, right? And this person just starts talking to me, and me, like I'm super introverted and don't know the language too well and try to hide behind my eye mask, and nothing worked. So he was talking to me anyway, but he was a very, very friendly guy. And then we're chatting, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Yeah, I can show you around Denver." And and then we became friends, just friends, nothing else. And he just showed me around. So I arrived in Boulder, and my friend, not this friend, but my other friend from the same university that I came from, she arrived a couple of days later. So this guy who I had met on the plane, he was like, "Yeah, I'll show you guys around." It was also the time of 4th of July, so he took the two of us to see like a typical American celebration of 4th of July. He would take us out on bike rides. He was just so friendly. We went to some concerts. It's just like met a person on the plane who had like no interest in other than just like showing foreigners around. I was like, holy cow, like this is so awesome. Like I've never experienced anything like this. Um, so that was awesome. And then some other examples of like people being really friendly. The first year that I was in UC Berkeley, my friend's roommate, she was American, and then her family was like, "Hey, these two people from Estonia and Finland, like they're probably kind of lonely around Thanksgiving. They don't have anybody here, so let's invite them." And we got to see like a true American Thanksgiving with all the foods and all the celebrations. Really warm and really nice people. We were so grateful to just like be there and like be so accepted and so supported. And it was super nice because first of all, Thanksgiving wasn't really anything that's common in our culture in Europe. At least wasn't then. I don't know how it is now. I don't think it still is a thing, but I don't know. Um, but just like they were kind of worried. Like, are they okay? How are they feeling? We should support them, show them. I don't know. It was just very, very sweet. Um, I've had so many other examples of like early on when I was here, how friendly people were. They still are. But just another example that comes to mind was when I was in the summer school and I was in Denver. The first night I was in Denver, just got off the plane and found the hotel. And the next morning, I had to get to Boulder. I had to get back. I had to get on the bus station or something like that. And I was there with my like a big suitcase and like no idea where to go. Where am I going? What am I doing? And this truck driver just randomly pulls over. It's like, "Hey, where are you going?" He had a really strong, which I now know, Texas accent. But back then, like I didn't understand half of it. He didn't seem to be bothered by it. He was still talking the whole time. But basically he was asking me like, where am I going? So he dropped me off at the bus station. Just a random person. And these things are so awesome. Like I love it. I think maybe a lot of people would be like scared. But me in my early 20s, then I was like, no, yeah, it's fine. I'm gonna go with this person and let them drive me to the bus station. It'll be fine, and it would always was fine. So, yeah, people have been really, really friendly, and that's kind of new because in Northern Europe, this is not what you typically see. Like you have to break through. You have to kind of break a lot of ice there to get to this level of like friendliness. This is just how the culture is different. I always say these countries are so cold. Like people are colder too. They protect themselves. Here it's like warmer. People are more laid back, more open. And I gotta say, I really enjoy it because this type of thing has helped me to open up a lot more too and become more open, easygoing person as well. Now, the next thing that was interesting and surprising was that you cannot walk everywhere. Okay. So that's really interesting because in Europe, you're used to walking to every single place. Like even big cities, everything's walkable, let alone like smaller towns. Every single place is walkable. And this is also what I experienced on that same trip to Denver. So when I stayed the first night at a hotel, and in the morning I was like, I gotta go get something to eat. So let me go find a grocery store. And so I walked out of the hotel lobby, and it was, the hotel was kind of like not inside the city exactly. It was a little bit outside. And then the receptionist, she's like, where are you going? And I was like, I'm gonna go find a grocery store, because I saw on the map, back then it was paper map, that there's a grocery store not too far. And she's like, you can't walk there. I'm like, what do you mean? It's not that far, right? No, you can't walk there. Like, there's nowhere to walk. There's no sidewalk. And that was so crazy to me. I'm like, so how am I gonna get to this store then? And she's like, no, you gotta catch a cab or something. And so that was super interesting. And of course, later too, like, yeah, not everything is walkable. Like, that's so, so different. In Europe, if you ever go to a vacation in Europe, you just walk all the time. And most people get like million steps. And I think maybe that's why a lot of people are in a pretty good shape too, because they're walking a lot more. It's just made easier for them, and their possibilities, their sidewalks. So you can actually walk. But here, this was a big culture shock for me. The next thing that was very interesting for me, and I figured that out in 2011, was that you need to show your ID to buy alcohol, no matter how old you look. Super surprising. Because again, back in my home country and in Finland too, like, no problem. Like, nobody ever asks you anything. If you look like close to 20, you're fine, right? Just go get your drink, whatever you want. But here, no. So the way I learned that at first was in 2011. Me and my supervisor, we were in San Diego in one of the linguistics conferences, and it was his birthday. And so I thought, I'm gonna make him like a cute little surprise. I'm gonna go buy a little cupcake and put a candle on it, and then bring and buy him like a small bottle of prosecco, right? And of course, back then I was running a ton, so I ran to the store, and I was gonna get the prosecco, and I didn't bring my ID because I don't know how old. What was I, 25 or 20 something, 25 or something like that. And then they asked me to show my ID, and I didn't have it with me. And yeah, that was another. I never got that prosecco. I got the cupcake, but never got the prosecco. So that was also a really, really interesting thing. And I've gotten used to it now, although I don't buy alcohol anymore at all. But sometimes if I do, then they ask the idea, and it's like normal now. But back then it was definitely not normal. Okay, so the next thing is probably nothing new for anybody, but this is getting used to different measuring units, right? Metric versus imperial. So, also Celsius versus Fahrenheit. These are really difficult. So right now I'll say pretty good at like Celsius and Fahrenheit, although Celsius is still a little bit easier for me. That's what I used in Europe. And Fahrenheit, I understand really well the numbers that I have experienced. So I know what 120 is like, because this is Arizona, right? In Phoenix, yes, that's crazy. Or I know what like 90s are like, or what 60s are like. But when it's like, something in between that I haven't necessarily very often experienced, then it's still easier for me to think in Celsius. Pounds, yeah, I'm doing well with that, obviously, because this is part of my job. A lot of people, with body weight, we talk about pounds or kilograms. I don't care. I do well either way. What is still difficult though is like distances, like feet, are difficult for me. For example, when I drive and look at the map, and then it says like in 500 feet, I really have to think about it in my head, like how far is that 500 feet where I have to turn right. So this is still a little bit difficult, but it's not like a big deal. But it does take a lot of time at first to get used to it. All right, the next one, that's kind of random, but also timely, because it was just Halloween. So I remember, like I said, when I moved here, it was that time, it was October, and Halloween decorations were coming out, and just how many decorations you saw on the streets. Like, people's houses were decorated like crazy. I'd never seen anything like this. And I was like, this is freaking scary. Like, why do people have like skeletons hanging out the windows, or like in front of their houses, or on the lawns in front of their house? It was so strange to me. Like, this stuff is scary. Like, why would you put like creepy spiders on your windows? But then of course I learned that this is how the culture is. This is how Halloween is like. But overall, like, all the decorations, and also Christmas decorations, they are just, there's just so much more than in Europe, that what you see. It's just the houses are just, sometimes I wonder what are their electricity bills like, because there's just so many decorations everywhere. So this is still very interesting, but now I truly enjoy it. Like when it's time for Halloween or Christmas, I like to take late night walks outside, around my neighborhood and just look at the decorations. I think they're really pretty, but this is nothing that you see in Europe. Also, like how Christmas trees are decorated. And this is also something that I already, when I was younger, I saw in movies. I was always thinking, wow, there's no non-decorated spot on that Christmas tree when you watch an American movie. In Europe, it's definitely a little bit less like that. There's like less lights, less everything. So it's very colorful and bright here when it comes to decorations. And that also reminds me of a funny story in Hawaii, where my husband's from. There are, like, I feel like in Hawaii it's even bigger. Like the Christmas decorations, there's just so many. And there's one house on the main street, like where we have to turn into my husband's parents' place. And this house on the corner is like so decorated always. It's just like, you can see like miles away basically. And my father-in-law, he calls it the gingerbread house. And so now when the Christmas was over and they took the lights down, he literally missed a turn because the gingerbread house wasn't visible anymore. Like, where do I even turn? So it's just so bright and so much decoration. It's just super interesting. Okay, the next thing is okay, so phone numbers that have letters in it. I didn't know how else to say it, but when you have something like 1-800 buy junk, or one of these. And I was looking at those at first. I was like, what does this mean, like buy junk, or like whatever the combination is. And I asked my husband, like, how does this work? Like, there's no numbers in my, when I dial a number, no letters when I dial a number. And then he explained me, like, each letter has um, like a number, right? So, and I was like, wait, does everybody know that? Is something common? It's like, yeah, it's totally common. And I did not know that. Without asking him, I don't think I would have figured it out. Like, what does this mean? How do I call a number that has like some kind of word in it? So I don't know. This is a totally new thing for me. I've never seen this in Europe. Okay, what is the next thing? Okay, so cheap clothes and perfumes. So this is one of the things that I definitely find costs a lot less in the States. If you want to buy clothes, if you want to buy like cosmetics or perfumes, which I don't personally use anymore, but when I did, oh yeah, like the first couple of trips, like 2009 especially, was my very first time in the States. And we would buy a lot of clothes and a lot of perfumes and bags and things, because the stuff you have to pay like hundreds of euros for in Europe. Like if you want to buy something like, I don't know, like a Guess bag or something like that, here you could get the same thing for a lot cheaper. And I just had my cousin here. He visited a couple of months ago with a couple of his friends, and these guys, yeah, they bought like a full suitcase because they bought just so many clothes. They're like, everything's so much cheaper. They bought so many clothes. This stuff is so much more expensive in Europe. So that's a pretty cool thing. So when you go to Europe, it's gonna be the other way. Like, why is stuff so expensive? But it is, like, brands, clothes, stuff like that is more expensive in Europe for sure. All right, so the next thing is a kind of sad thing. What was a culture shock when I came here was how many homeless people there were. So I can obviously not speak for like all the states in the United States, but my first stop was where I actually lived, was California. And so I remember a lot of people in San Francisco. It was so unusual to see so many homeless people, a lot of them clearly mentally ill too, and just wandering around the streets, nobody helping them. So that was super weird for me. In Estonia, you definitely don't see that number of homeless people. In Finland either. It's hardly ever. Again, it may have changed now. I've been away for 10 years. And I know at the same time in San Francisco, it has gotten a lot worse. So for me, it was shocking at first because I was thinking, why is nobody taking care of them? Like, is there a place for them? Why is there not a place for them where they could live and get help? And there just isn't. So that's another thing. Like, I feel like here in the States, everybody's like responsible for their own stuff. Like, you're on your own. You're very much on your own. There's no like safe, like security safety net you can land on. It's just, you're screwed, you're screwed. It's kind of like that. So you very much have to figure things out yourself. And I'm not necessarily all the way against it. I think in some countries it can be like a little bit too much of that safety net and security net, to the point where people just get a little too comfortable with it. Let's put it that way. Uh, I've noticed that, especially in Finland. I think some people take advantage of, the systems that they have set up there. But at the same time, it was painful to see how many people were struggling on streets and nobody helping them, and they had no place to go to. So that was super sad. And like I said, I know it has gotten a lot worse since 2020, when we all know what happened. And then since then, it has gotten a lot worse. So that was a sad thing. That was a really sad thing to see. Okay, the next thing, okay, coming back to kind of more fun things. What was shocking or very interesting to me was there was food involved in everything that you do. So that I remember well when I started at UC Berkeley, and we did like, there's like a movie night on the campus, or some kind of like lecture that was like fun lecture or a different topic, or some kind of guest speaker, whatever. And you read like the little flyer or something. Hey, we have a movie night, and there's food. There's like pizza and cookies, and every time there's some kind of event like that, there's food. And this was like almost like more important thing than the event itself. And this was really interesting because I was thinking, well, I'm gonna go see the movie. Like, why do I have to eat there? But this became a norm, right? Because here's like everything is like revolving around food. If food is not included, it's like, I don't know, is anybody even going? So that was definitely something that I had to get used to. Like, that was very, very new to me. Okay, the next thing is, this is a really, really positive thing too. I found that here in the States, alcohol use is better, is more normal than where I'm coming from. And again, it can vary from area to area. But what I noticed was that people socially, when they drink, they're normal, right? They have a few beers, and so nobody's like fighting or like arguing or like getting in trouble necessarily. Versus in Northern Europe, I'd say that drinking is definitely have much bigger problem, and people have more of like this on or off button very strong. It's like, if we're not drinking at all, then it's not at all. But then weekends we can go absolutely nuts, and then drinking can get very out of hand. A lot of like, drunk driving, a lot more than here, a lot more. So if you think it's bad in the States, I think it's a lot worse in Northern Europe at least. And just like in general, like how much people consume alcohol, I would say it's a lot higher in Northern Europe. So it's really refreshing to see when you come here that people are so normal. They can have a beer or two and still, hang out and be normal and not get in fights and go home and be normal the next day. So this was a really, really positive thing. And then what do I have the next thing on my list? I cannot read my own handwriting. Oh, okay, distances. Okay, distances is the next thing I want to talk about. So what was super interesting for me at first is when you ask somebody, how far is that city or that place or something, everybody would always respond in how much time it takes to drive there. So when I ask, I live in San Francisco or, that area, and ask, how far is, I don't know, San Jose? They'll say, it's an hour away. So this is so interesting because I'm used to like, is it like 50 kilometers away or is it like 75 kilometers away? But here everything is just measured in how much time it takes to drive there. So that was so unusual for me because I want to know how many miles it is. But then I learned that, of course, it's more practical to know like how long it takes to get there because you are always driving, right? So you want to know how long it gets there. So that was new. And then the other thing about distance is like, of course, the whole like how big the country is still really, really, really overwhelmingly big. And now, I come from a really, really small country. Estonia is so tiny that literally from one end of the country to the other, to opposite end, it takes you maximum 4 hours. That's the entire country. But here, living in California, the country is so big, or the state is so big, and Arizona too. It's so big. So that was just like, interesting to see how the understanding of like distances changes. Before, when I came from Europe, it was like if something was an hour away, it was like too far to even think about going there because you come from such a small country. It feels like, oh, I'm going to spend like half of a day. No, I'm not going to drive there. But here it's normal. Like I have to drive somewhere 3 hours and 3 hours back. It's okay, I can do it. So I personally now, like I go to my dentist who's in Mexico. It takes me 6 hours to drive there and 6 hours to drive back. And I do it because it's cheaper and it's worth it. And I'll go and the doctor is great. But in Estonia, you would never even think that you're going to drive like 2 hours in one day, 2 hours back. So this has changed so much. And again, like when my cousin was here too, he said, "What? Like we're going to Flagstaff from Phoenix, but that's like 2 hours away. Sure, you want to go?" I'm like, "That's nothing. It's not too far at all." So definitely that changes with time. Okay, the next thing that I really, really liked here, still like, is I think customer service is really, really good. And a lot of you may disagree with this. I think it depends on where you are from. I remember I had one friend back when I lived in California. She would always say that, "Are you kidding me? Customer service good here in California? It's crap." Because she was from the Midwest and she said, like, if you've never been to the Midwest, you have never seen really great customer service. And for me, coming from Northern Europe, like the customer service in California was excellent. Still really good. I think in Phoenix, in Arizona too, it's really good. So at least in Europe, in Northern Europe, your customer service is nowhere near as good. Just be warned if you ever go that direction, and you sit down at the restaurant, you wait for a menu, you wait and wait and wait and wait, and maybe somebody comes, and then let's say you drink wine and then you finish your glass and they don't usually notice that your glass is empty to offer you another one. They just don't pay attention to it too well. Or then you wait your check later on. You can just sit there and keep waiting. Everything is like slower, and customer service is not very friendly. So I think Estonians are not designed to be customer service people. But this is something that I really appreciate here. I think customer service in general is really, really good. Okay, then the next thing is, okay, so that's a pretty interesting thing too. I was really surprised how short the maternity leaves and vacations in general are here in the States. Like women get like what, 6 weeks maybe when they have a newborn, and that's like something that you in the countries where I'm coming from, it's unbelievable because there you can stay home much, much longer and it's usually paid. So I remember my sister with her second baby, she stayed home for I think close to 3 years. And I think 2 of these years were paid full. So this is like really unusual to me, and still I think it's very not healthy to have to like go rush back to work 6 weeks after your baby's born. Also that the vacations are so short. I think a lot of people only get 2 weeks off. In Europe it's more like a month, literally get a month off, and you're not expected to work during that month, but it's definitely different here. And overall I would say like how much people are working here and how busy people are, that was at first super shocking. But I gotta say that now, being self-employed, I've gotten used to it and I've become part of it, sort of. Maybe not as much still, but still very much impacted by it. But yeah, how much people work here and how little they rest, it's quite unbelievable. I think only maybe one part of the world, which is Japan, where people work even harder and really stress themselves out with a lot of work, maybe there. But overall I'd say United States is just people put in crazy amount of work, and if you're one of them, just give yourself some grace. And if you're like beating yourself up for not doing enough, you are doing more than enough. You're doing more than enough, and you probably need more fun and joy in your life and more downtime. So this was and still is something that I really still notice. Okay, next thing that I want to say is, okay, some traffic rules that were interesting for me. So here in the States, I don't know, maybe it's different in different states, but at least in Arizona and California, these are two states that I lived in, that you can turn right even if the light is red. So you can never do this in Europe. Don't try this. If you make a right turn on a right light, you're gonna get in trouble. You're gonna get a ticket for it. So don't ever do that. Another thing that was interesting for me was, okay, so this is a big thing, sauna culture, right? And I think I've talked about a little bit on my social media too, and I want to talk about it a lot. Like people in Northern Europe, in Europe in general, don't go to sauna full, like all the clothes on. We go to sauna naked. And I think the whole naked culture is like, there's so much shame here in the States around our like bodies, like somebody seeing us naked, going to sauna with like long sleeves on, or like, I don't know, if you go to sauna with no clothes on, you're probably seeing like a crazy person, but this is not true. Like, why you go to sauna is to, like, one big part of it is just you're naked there. Your skin needs to be exposed. You have to get the heat in. You have to get the natural processes going, the detoxification, all that. You cannot get it if you sit there with your sweaty gym clothes on. So that, I think it does take it to a bigger problem, which is like general body shame. There's a lot more of it in the States. I feel like in Europe, people are more like, yeah, whatever. I go to sauna. Like you go to sauna with your family members, and not necessarily like if you're a woman, you don't go with like other men, right? Or, other than maybe your husband or boyfriend. But with other women, it's totally normal. With your friends, with your mom, with your sister, like all the other females, like nobody is looking at you like, holy shit, I'm gonna count her rolls or look how her boobs are sagging. It's nothing like that. Like you just sit there. Sauna is a place for like health. It's a place for conversations. It's a place for just relaxing. A lot of the best conversations happen in the sauna. It's nothing like so rigid and so strict and so shameful. It's like, oh my God, I'm naked. So I really hope that at one point here too, we get over that like false shame and understand also the benefits of sauna, um, which is, health and getting the detoxing effects and just feeling good and just getting rid of the shame. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Like you were born with this body and you are perfect the way you are. It sounds cheesy, but like worrying about your body, how your skin is, or how your rolls are wearing a sauna, it's just too much and it's unnecessary and it's unreasonable. Like this is not what we do, what we should be doing there at all. So take your clothes off when you go to sauna. Just take them off. Okay, you'll be fine. All right. And then a couple more things. One of them was news, right? So first, when I watched some news, I remember I was at the airport waiting for my flight, and the news came on, and I was really surprised because like it was filled with like a lot of like scary stuff, right? And I had been used to like in Europe, it was more like news of like what's going on politically or environmentally or sports or stuff like that. But here was like scary stuff on repeat. Like this person got killed, there was shooting there was this and then they were on repeat. Like they started the same loop again. And that was really surprising for me. And that's why I always say, like, don't watch the fucking thing. It's just so depressing and it's not fun and it's not informative. It's just a lot of depressing stuff. So that's something that I stopped doing very, very quickly. All right. And let's see if I have anything else on this list. Well, one more thing is that in general, like it seems that in the States, there's more kind of like very extreme ways of thinking, let's say, especially the field where I'm in, which is weight loss and fat loss. Everything is very much like rigid. It's yes or no, black or white, this or that. And then people go into extremes, like trying out like super extreme diets. This is not very, very common. I feel like in Europe, people are like, I'm going to watch my eating a little bit. For example, my sister, she's a good example of that. She's like, yeah, I've noticed that I've gained a couple kilograms. So I'm probably going to stop, having beer during the weekends. And maybe I only have one on Saturday and I just reduce my chocolate, something like that. But I feel like here is a lot of times like, it's absolutely no, I'm never going to have this ever. And then you're gonna get in trouble because you cannot stick with it because it's so extreme. So like this, it's like very, very extreme approach to health and fitness that I find. It's like there's no like fluidity or like yes or no. It's kind of like, yeah, it's like yes or no. It's not like, oh, can I consider maybe this is an option too? It's like very hardcore. You like put yourself in a box and put a label on it. I'm following this diet and this is how I do it. Becomes more almost like a cult thing. So that's definitely another difference. But yeah, a lot of interesting things that I have noticed. I think the biggest things are just like how big the things are. It's still sometimes surprising when I see like how big portions are or how big the kitchen things or streets or cars. Like I said, that's definitely, I think, the first big thing for a lot of people who come here. They're just like, oh my goodness, this is this really true? Like, who needs this much? So this is always and like excess of everything, like I mentioned with the decorations and things. But like I want to end with a positive thing, and I want to say that for me, like the best thing and something that I have appreciated the most are the people, are really the people, and then the attitude, the friendliness, the openness, the warmth, how much people share, even like when you are don't even know them that well yet, you've gotten to know them and they're open and they tell you things about their life. It's really awesome. I really like it, and like I said, it has helped me like personally a lot, to become more open person too, and not be so afraid, because I definitely have had and still sometimes have like a little bit of like social anxiety, but this has gotten a lot better when you're just surrounded by people who are more open and more positive and help you to be this way as well. So I hope that this episode was fun to listen to. Give me some feedback. Let me know. Was there anything surprising? Was there something surprising about the things that surprised me? Or anything else you want to comment? So that would be great to hear. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.